table that you can roll out the coil like that. And that's great. It takes practice to get good at making it a uniform diameter. The problem with this, see, the good news is you don't have to have an extruder to do coil, to make things. You could do this at home on your kitchen table. The problem though is the table and my hands suck the moisture out of the coil. And so there's this thin layer of dry clay, and the clay doesn't stick to itself. Now, we're going to learn about, I'm going to go through a very quick anatomy lesson, the anatomy of an extruder. This is called a die. This die will make the coil you'll use. We've got several of these at school. We've got 4 of these extruders at school. And 4 dies, so there won't be any standing in line for the extruder, hopefully. I'm going to put the die in the collet, and the collet goes on the cylinder. The cylinder is attached to the mount. The ram has a clove hitch that sleeves over the mount. When you load the extruder, you want to make a big 8-pound, kind of an 8-pound burrito shape that can fit in, narrow enough to fit inside there. So you'll need to get some more clay.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the bookstore got a shipment of clay as sculpture mix, so we're in good stead there for the next project, starting on Tuesday.
Is 1 bag enough?
Yes. Yes.
You said they have more clay in the...
Yes.
Okay,
so that's about 8 pounds right there.
What about ceramic clay? Do they have any more in there? In the bookstore?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So what I did here, I did this morning in preparation for this demo. We're going to get to this in a minute. Get that out of the way. I did step 1. This is a lot like a cooking show where they make the thing, put it in the oven, and then they make the thing again for the camera. So when they're done making it, they pull it out of the oven, it's done, right? It's like that. So I will make photocopies of a template size oval that's 12 inches wide, and your job will be to make a dome 12 inches tall as the first step. So I'm going to show you now how to start the first step using coils, but only instead of rolling it, instead of, okay, let me just say, the obvious advantage of using a extruder is that my hands and this table have not taken any of the moisture out of the clay. So I'm going to make an oval shape that's smaller than 12 inches. First, we're going to call that a shrink ring. We'll first make a shrink ring. You'll take a longer coil and surround the shrink ring. And then we're going to join those together. Notice how I'm using the turntable so that all of my actions are very efficient, right? I'm I'm not having to stop what I'm doing to turn the turntable. So the turntable is going to be an essential part of this process. Oh, there's something I didn't do here in my demo that you will need to do. You'll need to be doing this on a 12-inch board so that you can move it right over off the counter off your working surface onto the counter. Okay, so that's the start. 2 coils at the base. Then you guys all have one of these in your kit, a serrated metal rib. The next step will be to create a sort of bevel on the outer part of the wider coil. This clay is so soft that it'll probably stick to itself, but yours might not be. So I'll show you what I do if the clay is stiff. I just apply water right where I'm going to put the next coil. Did you notice how I just rolled it on? So that you don't want it to be slippery, because the next step means if it's slippery, you can't do the next step with your fingers. Okay, here we go. I didn't make it quite long enough, but I'm not worried about that. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm pushing with my thumb in a downward motion against the shrink ring to do the first course.
But you didn't score that one.
I don't need to. The whole point of using an extruder to make the coils is so that I don't have to do scoring and slip and blah, 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 blah. That's a lot of extra, unnecessary, inefficient, what's another word? Labor intensive. That word I use, fussy, is one word for all those other things. Right? So you don't have to be fussy if the clay is fresh enough that it sticks to itself. Now what I'd like you to do is to come and angle the camera down so that you're able to, the viewers will be able to see the action that I'm using with my index finger on the inside, pulling up. I'm dragging clay up onto the coil from the shrink ring on the inside, and I'm pulling down on the coil with my thumb on the outside. And these are equal and opposite forces right across from each other, like this. That is that is what I saw the Pueblo Indian woman use. That was the technique I saw her use to make her coil pots. Now, since we're making a dome, that row that I just did will be the widest or the longest coil. Everything from now on, every coil from here on will be shorter, so that it's going to continuously be wider at the bottom and narrower at the top as you work. I'm going to move this up a little bit. A lot of times you'll hear me at school harp about the ergonomics, but your optimal working range is right here, from your navel to your sternum, like this. If it's lower than that, you're stooping over, your back's going to hurt. If it's higher than that, your elbows and shoulders are going to wear out. So that's why I always have these scissor lifts when I work. Okay, so I've seen people watch this demo and then they'll do just on the outside all the way around, then they'll do just on the inside all the way around. Fine, that works too, but it just takes twice as long. Since you're learning a new skill with new working habits, you might as well teach yourself the most efficient way from the start, which is like this. And it's almost like Connie's learning how to knit. The first one took forever because you have to, and then you have to tear it out like that. At first, it's going to seem kind of awkward, but as soon as you get a working rhythm going, it goes a lot faster than you think. You should be able to do that step, the first step, in one class session. If you just, use the tool, use the material the way you see me doing it, use the tool that I'm showing you, and this hand building technique. Now, I've applied 4 rows. At this point, you need to pause. After you've done 4 rows, you need to pause and organize the surface. I like to use that term, organize, because I'm not, the purpose of this step is not to smooth it out. Well, I'm using a serrated rev, it's not going to be smooth. It's to get the wall thicknesses as uniform as possible. Later, after the piece is built and you want to do design refinements, now Cozy can testify to this, you want those wall thicknesses to be as uniform as possible so that when you're trying to paddle it into the shape you want, it's going to respond the same way everywhere. If it's thick here, thin there, that's going to be a problem. So that's the problem you're solving.
What was
now,
magic about 4 rows? Why 4 and not 3?
Because, that's a good question. I guess it's because if you actually, the answer to your question is more, let me rephrase the question.
Fine.
Why do I need to do that? Why can't I just stack them all up and then do it at the end?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Just
Just gonna take my word for it. Okay. So if you do it every 4,
it's a good average.
you're able to maintain the wall thicknesses as it builds. Yeah.
It's the size of your hand too. You can get your hand in there.
Yeah, the actual
The
you're
tool.
right, the actual how do you say intuitive gesture of my hand is that length. The stroke is about that length.
Thank you.
That's good. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Can I add another thing that I learned just from the first class?
Yeah.
By doing that too is, I didn't do it and last semester, and it wasn't as strong. Like, in other words, for some reason it seems like it gave it more strength on the bottom.
Yeah.
Because then when I had to go took a couple of the coils off and went back, it did make a difference. So for me, it just felt like it was stronger too by doing that.
Thank you. So, in review, just remember that each succeeding coil needs to be shorter than the last, because when making a dome, gravity is working in your favor. It's helping you. If you pinch it, it'll get longer. If it gets longer, it'll get wider, and you'll have this, and you will not want that because gravity will have its way with you. You definitely want to have a dome shape. So I'm going to pause on this. See, I didn't put a board there, which was dumb, because now
There's a board right there.
I need to get me a different turntable. So what's that thing you hear me say a lot? don't do as I do, do as I say. Start on a 12-inch board so that you can move this to the counter